Today we're gonna be trying vegan ranch. Hi, I'm Val, and I made the recipe website Very Vegan Val. Nice to meet you, or welcome back. When it comes to ranch, 40% of Americans say that's their favorite salad dressing. So I have to imagine that a good percentage of vegans also want a decent ranch. Today I'm going to be tasting these 5 salad dressings that I found at my local grocery store and telling you which one works best as a vegan ranch. Additionally, I'm going to be showing you 2 simple ways to make your own ranch from scratch if store-bought just isn't your thing. Here's what's important to me in a ranch dressing. The taste. You want it to be creamy and tangy, but also herbaceous and a little bit garlicky. In terms of texture, I know that rich and creamy is the name of the game with ranch. Personally, I like it when it's a little bit more pourable, but I know not everybody agrees. We will also be taking into account the price of each of these dressings. Obviously, these will vary store to store and area to area, but I'm just gonna be using the prices I paid as the benchmark. Let's get started trying ranch. We're gonna start with the Primal Kitchen's ranch. It is made with avocado oil. One thing to watch out for is it kind of looks like it might be a vegan brand, but it is not. They have a not plant-based version of the same dressing and it looks very similar, so make sure you look for plant-based ranch on the label. I will say this is the one that is furthest from a pure white of any of the ranches. It smells like ranch. Interesting, that is not what I expected. This actually does not taste like ranch. This tastes like apple cider vinegar more than anything. It does coat your mouth. It feels creamy, but it doesn't taste creamy. It has a lot of tang going on. Enough tang that my tongue can't really focus on any of the herby elements. They might be there. Visually, they look like they're there, but I'm not really tasting them because I'm mostly just getting vinegar. I think that's really interesting because I just took a quick peek and it has just about the same amount of fat as the other ones, yet I really don't taste it in a way that I would expect. In terms of price, this is the second most expensive dressing I got. It was $6.99 for the bottle. Let me just make sure that they're all the same amount. 8, 12, oh, just kidding. I'm gonna have to do some math to check out the amount per ounce. One moment. These have surprisingly different sizes. For example, this Follow Your Heart is 12 ounces and this is only 8, so that's a 4-ounce difference, so 50% more. Naturally, I went back and calculated the cost per ounce, and this one came in at the most expensive at 87 cents per ounce. Next up, we'll go to our Follow Your Heart. This is not perfectly white. It has a little bit of a yellowish tinge to it, but I would never notice. It is very thick. That is a very different experience from our Primal Kitchen one. It has some tang to it. It has some herbiness to it. It's very creamy. I think it's pretty well balanced. I will say it does feel a little bit oily. There's creamy and there's oily, and I think that this is just passing creamy and heading a wee bit into oily. Nevertheless, delicious. I definitely prefer it over the Primal in terms of trying to replicate a ranch dressing. Follow Your Heart is also an entirely vegan company, so you don't need to be worried about which dressing it is you're picking up. Price-wise, it is tied with another one of these dressings as the cheapest dressing we got, costing about 49 cents an ounce. Moving right along to the Daiya, which I still want to say Daiya, but I'm gonna try Daiya. Daiya is another entirely vegan brand and they make a ranch. This is a little bit more on the yellow side than the Follow Your Heart, but less so than the Primal. Very thick. This is by far the one that I had the hardest time getting out of the jar. So this has more tang than the Follow Your Heart. It is creamy and it is a little bit more tangy. It also has some spices in it, but I don't really taste them as much as I would like. And it has almost a little bit of a sweetness to it that doesn't quite play for me in a ranch, although it is close, just maybe a little bit more herb and a little bit less tang. In terms of the price, this one was middle of the pack at 59 cents an ounce. It is in a smaller bottle though, so price-wise overall, this was the individually cheapest ranch. Next up, we have Hidden Valley. So as many of you know, Hidden Valley is kind of the ranch company. There's a lot of salad dressing companies that are fairly well known, but Hidden Valley specifically is known for their ranch. And somewhat recently, they came out with this one, which is a vegan version. It is, I would say, the whitest of them. I will note it is the only one I got that came in plastic as opposed to glass, which I would say is a negative in terms of environmental considerations, but perhaps a positive in that you can actually squeeze it out of the bottle, which does make it a little bit easier to get out. I mean, that tastes like what I think of ranch tasting like. It's very fatty. It has a good amount of spice to it. If you're into sort of like clean ingredients and things like that, I would say that this one might not make the top of your list. It has, again, like the amount of tang I would expect. Now, is that because my idea of what ranch is was made by Hidden Valley? Maybe, but to me anyway, this delivers what I would expect a Hidden Valley ranch to deliver. This is the other ranch that was tied with the Follow Your Heart for being the cheapest of the bunch at 49 cents an ounce. Finally, Gotham Greens. I think this is a little bit of a smaller company compared to some of the other ones, but it is still, you know, nothing too small about it. This one was found in the refrigerated section. And in terms of like the color, I think it's one of the whitest ones we have. It's thick, but it's a little bit more pourable than some of them, which is what I personally like in my ranch. You know, I think that actually has more of a buttermilk flavor than any of the other ones. It also definitely has more garlic in it than any of the other ones. The texture is very creamy and there's definitely a good amount of tang to it, but the overriding flavor is not vinegar. Price-wise, this is the second to highest at 74 cents an ounce. Before we go on to making our own ranch dressing, I'm just gonna give you my quick rankings right here. My least favorite was the Primal Kitchen one. It was not only the most expensive, but it tasted the most like vinegar and the least like ranch. Their selling point here is that they use avocado oil. So if avoiding certain types of oil is a priority for you, this is an option, but I will say it's not the tastiest option, and I might go for making my own ranch over buying this one. Next, we have the Daiya ranch. Again, a little bit too tangy with not enough other flavors going on. Next up, we have the Follow Your Heart. I really liked this one actually. I think it has a good flavor, a good amount of tang, and a good amount of spices. It was an enjoyable experience and it was fairly cheap. Now it's a bit contentious between the Follow Your Heart and the Hidden Valley because in some ways I like the Follow Your Heart better. I think in terms of flavor, I like them just about the same. In terms of sustainability and being a vegan company, I like Follow Your Heart more, of course. But in terms of tasting like what I expect ranch to taste like, Hidden Valley tastes exactly like what I expect ranch to taste like. So I decided to place it higher up, but you can use your judgment as to what's more important to you. If you want something that's going to bring back the ranch nostalgia, go for your Hidden Valley. If you don't need it to taste exactly like the quintessential ranch and you just want a tasty, creamy ranch-like dressing, I think this is the better option, but hold your horses here, because if you can get your hands on the Gotham Greens vegan ranch, that was my favorite. It has the most of a buttermilk tang in its flavor, and it has the most flavor from garlic and other spices. And for me, I think that's what really elevated it above the other ones. Now that we've tasted it all, I think it's time to see what we can do in our own kitchens. So I'm gonna go through 2 different vegan ranch recipes with you. One of them is going to be incredibly quick, and the other one is going to be oil-free. So we're going to try both of them and see how they compare to the store-bought options. First up, we're gonna make a really quick version of ranch. Ranch is essentially a seasoned mayonnaise, so that's what we're gonna make. We're starting off with 1 cup of mayonnaise. I'm using the Hellmann's plant-based mayo. I'm gonna get a cup of mayonnaise. Next, I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of plant-based milk. We're also gonna add a little bit of apple cider vinegar. I'm just doing like a teaspoon. And now we're gonna add all of our seasonings. I'm gonna start with a teaspoon of dried dill, a teaspoon of garlic powder, a teaspoon of Italian seasoning, and I think 2 teaspoons of dried chives. You could of course use fresh chives if you have them. I'm also gonna add a pinch of salt and a sprinkle of pepper. Now we'll just add the lid and shake it until it's really well combined. And there we have homemade ranch number 1. That took me like 2 minutes. Now let's move on to our second homemade ranch. In a blender, we have 1 cup of cashew pieces and 1 cup of water. I've been letting mine soak for the past hour or so, just to make it easier for them to blend, but if you have a good blender, you really don't actually need to do that. Lemon juice. I'm gonna start with the juice of half a lemon, and depending on how it tastes, we may add the other half. Next, we're gonna add 1 clove of garlic, and then we're just gonna give this a blend. Time for spices. We're gonna start with 1 teaspoon of dried dill. They're gonna be pretty much the same spices as last time. A teaspoon of Italian seasoning, a sprinkle of pepper, and some salt. Now, unlike the one that started with mayonnaise, there's no salt in here yet. So we're gonna add a little bit more, maybe about half a teaspoon of salt. Now we're gonna add our chives, except for this time, I think I'm gonna do some finely chopped fresh scallions. We've just got 3 scallion leaves here. If you want a really smooth texture in your ranch, you are not going to want to do this because we're still gonna have relatively large pieces of scallion in our dressing. However, I think it will be delicious. And we'll just give it a final shake to incorporate our scallions. I guess we should give them a taste. Now, I think both of these were cheaper than any of the salad dressings. I'll do a little bit of calculation just to be sure. This mayonnaise-based dressing cost me this much an ounce. And the cashew-based dressing cost me this much an ounce. Both of them will thicken up in the fridge a bit. They are both a little bit thinner than the store-bought dressings at this time, but I don't actually think that's going to last. This is our mayonnaise-based dressing. You know, this dressing actually tastes very similar to the Gotham Greens dressing. I think the Gotham Greens dressing tastes a bit more cheesy than our homemade version, but honestly, I think I would have trouble telling them apart. Cashew version. This is the only dressing we have that does not have oil in it. It is different from all the other ones. It has more sweetness from the cashews. I think it could use a little bit more tang still, which you could just do, you know, you can modify that on your own. And the creaminess is different from the creaminess of the other ones. The other creaminess, it's a bit richer. This is more like a nut butter than a mayonnaise, if you know what I mean. Like, I mean, literally, it is more of a nut butter than a mayonnaise, but it also kind of tastes that way. I don't dislike it, but it's not my favorite option. I do really like the freshness of the lemon, and there is something nice about the sweetness of the cashew. And that is it for today. Do you guys like ranch? Let me know in the comments, and let me know what your favorite brand of ranch is, or if you preferred a homemade to a store-bought salad dressing. And if you want to subscribe and turn on notifications, you'll know when we next post. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. Do you have an oat milk addiction?